Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammaṃ Saṅghaṃ Namasami. As we enter the last 15-day period of the rains retreat, this is naturally tends to be a time when things start to loosen up a little, and so just as it's naturally a time to be a little bit overly relaxed and even perhaps a little heedless. It is also the time traditionally when we are reminded to maintain a continuity of effort and intensity of commitment and devotion to our practice, we feel that there are areas of the practice which are getting a little bit slack, then to put some renewed effort into those areas, and that wonderful phrase and image we come across in the suttas of the full moon emerging from behind the clouds. It's an image for one who has been heedless in the past and emerges from a period of heedlessness as being one who emits a great beauty and light, like a full moon emerging from the clouds. So we do have, just as we have this unfortunate and sometimes discouraging tendency to lose things a little bit, modern idiom, to lose the plot, or to just to slip away from the middle lane or the middle path. We also have the very encouraging tendency or encouraging capacity to realize that we're doing that, and to put ourselves right. And it's always good to remind ourselves of that every time that things are not going so well. Then the emotional reaction to that is to be depressed by it, which tends to make it even worse. One of the reminders that's very useful is that just how wonderful it is that we have this capacity to remedy mistakes and to re-establish our practice. We see this in formal meditation, just as it's very, very frustrating to make the same mistakes over and over again, or it's very irritating the deeply ingrained habit of the mind to slip away from its meditation object, or allow other thoughts, preoccupations, fantasies, memories to insinuate themselves into the mind and to ambush or hijack the mind in the course of meditation period. It's irritating to see that. On the other hand, looking at from the other side, isn't it wonderful that we have a capacity to bring our mind back to the breath? Have you ever really thought of that as a kind of a capacity, as a spiritual faculty, as a wonderful aspect of the human mind, that we can exercise that kind of restraint, that we can re-establish the mind, we can come back to balance after a period of imbalance. So there is imbalance, but there is balance. There is we have this capacity to put things down, just as we have the capacity to pick things up, which would rather better be left alone. We pick things up which are both heavy, dirty, smell bad, and we start to feel tired, weary, and we're aware that the bad smell of the thing we're carrying around is gradually working its way into our clothes and skin. And despite that, we have also the ability to sooner or later to put things down. We can do it. So that there's always the two sides of it, how unnecessarily obtuse, how ridiculously stupid we are sometimes, and yet similarly every now and again we just find ourselves quite unexpectedly intelligent and quite amazingly astute. There are these two sides to it, although we will tend to give more weight and significance to the negative, either through a culturally induced addiction to guilt, or else just perhaps a fear of getting carried away and becoming arrogant or spiritually proud. But to see the wealth and the diversity of the mind, both in its positive and negative aspects, and the opening up, we tend to so easily oversimplify. I think, who was it? I can't remember. Maybe it was Einstein or someone said like that. We should try to make things as simple as they can be, but no more. And the urge to simplify is one of the most solid and reliable and worthy of spiritual aspirations and qualities. But if taken too far, it can lead to a blurring of distinctions and a lack of precision. And this, we can see this in our appreciation or experience of mental states, where quite often we can just lump quite a diverse spectrum, well, not a diverse number, but a spectrum of emotions and thoughts and perceptions just under a single word. Perhaps we take the most prominent of the elements of the spectrum and take that to represent the whole, and so we're unaware of the complexity or the subtlety of the different aspects of a particular mood or feeling. So perhaps in negative states, the most crudest oversimplification, I feel bad, a little bit more sophisticated than that. Maybe we take anger or sorrow as being, a basic summation of how we feel down. Or, we have certain umbrella terms, which is fair enough in conversation. We don't want to get into kind of precise Abhidhamma-like enumerations of the different mental states we're experiencing. But in looking at the mind, be aware of that as an obstacle, being too easily led into generalizing or just giving one blanket term for what is often quite a complex of feelings, and sometimes there are contradictory feelings which somehow are living there at the same time. And so we feel this, and we feel this, and we feel that, and this kind of more inclusive and attitude of being one of being able to house within you, to be able to live with a multitude of selves. This is no overall self, but there is this kind of a multitude of different personalities and people, and some who we're familiar with, some we're not so familiar with, some we'd like to meet, and maybe some we wouldn't like to meet at all. But when there's a big enough space in the mind, we realize we can let them all show their face. We don't have to have strict and we'd have to have restrictions on who can show their face in our minds, but we do have clear principles and standards as to what we encourage and what we don't. So the other night I was talking about the advice, relating the advice that I got from a senior monk once, which has always stayed with me, has been very resonant in my mind, and the importance of maintaining the spirit of one's original renunciation, that which first leads one into the spiritual life, and that which first enthuses the mind with the beauty and the nobility of qualities of morality and peace and wisdom and renunciation, altruism, and so on. And this we may have articulated it to ourselves or talked to ourselves about it in terms of freedom from suffering, or it may have been a search for the highest or the ultimate, or an intense interest in the nature of reality and what it means to be a human being. In whatever way that we've talked about it, I see a basic underlying questing mind, and I've spoken about this before, having a sense of questing onwards, and that spiritual warfare, and one in which the warrior has to include within himself many of the qualities which are not traditionally associated with warriors. He's one who has to be so totally tough and determined, and yet at the same time not to lose sight of and not to be separated from the softness and gentleness of our nature. And we see this so clearly in meditation. If you have that kind of fighting spirit, but it lacks the warmth of spirit and the gentleness and the precision and interest in experiencing fully nature of experience. If it's just to sort of knock everything out of the way that's seen as an obstacle, then you can have trouble. And a humorous illustration of that comes to mind in the movie years ago, the Monty Python and the Holy Grail, where John Cleese plays this knight who I think he's sort of cutting a swathe through this castle of what he perceives are enemies and actually are wedding guests, and he's got it all wrong. He misunderstands who it is that he's fighting, and ends up fighting and killing huge numbers of innocent people. Being a comedy film, it's not so much tragic as funny, but in our own lives, that kind of absolutist kind of warrior spirit is not the spiritual ideal of the Buddhist warrior as the one who will reach the goal. In fact, in a Western tradition, these kinds of truths are not absent. If we look at the real, not the parody, but the pastiche, but the real tradition of the Knights of the Round Table, then you see this, and great emphasis on spiritual qualities, and you see say Sir Gawain is one of the most famous of the great ballads, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. I don't know if any of you have ever studied that or read that at school or college. And it's having this big banquet at it's years ago since I've read this, but as best as I can remember, it's sort of a very cold, fierce midwinter's night, and all the Knights of the Round Table are there, and maybe it's New Year's Eve or something, I can't remember. There's an incredible pounding on the doors, and they open it, and into the midst of the gathering strides this huge giant of a man, completely encased in green armour, and a visor over his. You can't see his face, you don't know who he is. He's absolutely huge, and he issues this challenge, and he challenges any of the Knights of the Round Table who's man enough to smite him, and smite him as hard as they like, for free. And the only thing he asks in return is that in 1 year's time, if he's still alive, that he has the right to smite the person who smited him in return. So there's this debate amongst all the Knights of the Round Table, and King Arthur and is up for it, but eventually it's Sir Gawain who takes his sword, and the whole of the castle falls quiet, and you could hear a pin drop, and this huge green knight is just standing there, and Sir Gawain strides up very nobly and completely concentrated, takes his sword and goes whoosh, cuts off the green knight's head. Green knight's head falls to the ground. Pop, pop. His body's still standing there. Slowly, his body bends. His hand picks up the head off the floor, sticks it back onto his torso, and says, "I'll be waiting for you in a year's time," and strides off into the snow. So a whole year passes, and Sir Gawain eventually has to set off in pursuit of the Green Knight. He doesn't know where he lives, and so he goes through many adventures in seeking for him. And eventually, the year is almost up, and he still hasn't found the Green Knight, although he started to hear something about him. And he comes across this castle, and he's taken in by the lord of the castle and his beautiful wife. And I think Sir Gawain by this time is frostbitten, or he's very ill, and so they look after him. And the lord of the likes to go hunting every day, and he's out every day. So he said, look, you just stay here and take it easy. Don't worry about anything, and my wife will look after you. And we make a pact. We make a pact while you're here that whatever either of us should acquire, we share it. So Sir Gawain says okay. And then in the following day, he's laying in his bed, and there's a knock on the door, and the beautiful wife of the Lord comes in, and it's very kind of demure, and sits beside him and starts talking. And of course, being a knight, then he has to know how to entertain ladies and be very charming and recite poetry and stuff, and getting along very well. And it's obvious that she's very attracted to him, and he's kind of attracted to her, but he's a knight, and so he doesn't want to offend her either. And in the end, before she'll, I can't remember if it was the first day or the second day, things sort of get in, as these things do, kind of intensify. And so either the first or second day, she covers him in kisses before she leaves, and she's very reluctant to leave him, and she's fallen in love with him. And but he maintains this incredible balance between courtesy and politeness and decorum and his own sila, because he's sworn to chastity until he finds the Holy Grail, and also out of consideration for his host and benefactor, apart from anything else. So that night he meets the Lord who's been out hunting, and so he's got something for dinner, and he shares it, because everything they acquires, he shares it. And so he says, have you acquired anything today? And we share it. And so Sir Gawain goes over and gives him a lot of kisses, and he says, this is what I got today, so share it with you. And and that's as far as it ever gets. And he shares the kisses he gets from the man's wife with the man himself. And then finally he has to get to the last day, and he goes out and he meets the Green Knight, and they have this, and he has to stand there. This is an incredible feat of courage, that now he's finally reached this point where he just has to stand there, and there's this huge giant of a man in green armour, allowed to have a free swipe at him with whatever weapon he chooses. And so the Green Knight gives him an incredible blow, and he's wounded badly, but not mortally. And then the Green Knight removes his helmet, and of course it's his friend, the Lord, and he says that he spares his life because of his devotion to his sila and the absolute nobility and propriety of his behaviour with the man's wife, despite the most, it was kind of all set up as a test for him to see whether he could maintain his vows and his purity. At least this is how I remember the story, and I think that's pretty accurate. But there's this thing that, of course, really stands out. This ideal of the warrior that you get from Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. So, for me, you have this wonderful mixture and completeness of virtues. You've got this sense of utter courage and fearlessness, whether the sort of courage that to let you just stand there, motionless, with this huge guy towering over you, looking totally frightening, encased in green armor with a great big sword in his hand, and just willing. And he'd gone there of his own volition, of course, because he'd promised to. He'd made that. He had such a barami. I mean, I don't think the Green Knight would come and chased him up or anything, and he didn't have to go. Didn't know where the Green Knight was, and he was willing to travel through the winter on his horse and encounter all kinds of difficulties and dangers and endure so much for the prospect of certain death. And that kind of resolution and courage and devotion to his word and to the power of his promise and his vows. So you have that side, and then there's this incredible gentle, courteous side where he's in this extremely embarrassing situation where he's been taken in out of the cold and from possible frostbite, and I don't know if they had hypothermia in those days, but whatever was the medieval equivalent of hypothermia, and saved his life, and then this was beautiful, incredibly attractive woman showing this incredible interest, and actually coming into his bedroom and sitting down on his bed beside him and passing the whole day beside him, this kind of romantic kind of versifying and talking, and still he was able to maintain, as I say, both his virtue, his sila, but also his courtesy and nobility in every way. So this is a kind of just a kind of illustration from Western tradition of that kind of ideal of a noble warrior, and this is something for us, I think, always to remember, to particularly living in community. When you're on retreat for any length of time, then the whole ideal and the sense of being a warrior arises very naturally. It just seems a very obvious and apt image. But in community, then the image of a warrior living together with others is not so clear cut, and when the social virtues of fitting in and helping out and being kind and thoughtful and considerate, and these kinds of virtues come to the fore and give, and are a very important part of our life, of course. But at the same time, we have to that in no way need take away from the image, the ideal of the warrior, one who's striving in every posture, with every breath, to transcend the fires of lust and greed, hatred, and delusion. And the thing about those fires, and we were chanting just now, this is so beautiful chant. The thing about those fires is that they don't always feel like fires. I mean, anger certainly does. When you're angry, you feel hot, and we all know that. And when you're feeling intense lust, then there's a real kind of heat, and it's not very pleasant. But there are so many defilements particularly those which are permeated with wrong view, which you don't get that kind of sense of heat. And when I went to the hospital yesterday and I was speaking with our lay supporter who has cancer and who's been having radiation treatment, I was just asking him about, how does it feel when they're actually irradiating part of your neck? And do you feel this kind of heat? Is it like a kind of a laser beam or something? I don't really know. And he said, no, don't feel anything. And I could see in the 2 weeks since I was on retreat, I obviously didn't go to see him, but seeing now all his neck is going this kind of black colour from the radiation that he's been receiving. And this is like the kind of, and I was thinking it's like the fire of defilements. The actual moment, maybe often, there's not that kind of real sense, but then over a period of time you can see this kind of blackening and hardening and shriveling of the heart that comes from allowing those kinds of mental states to overwhelm the mind, and that's why there has to be, this is where you need your sword to cut these off. And the Buddha says don't harbour, don't allow these kinds of these thoughts, these conceptual proliferations, with greed and lust and anger and so on to fester in your mind. You see them like cancer cells. Even one cancer cell, it's always already bad news. And if you want to stay healthy, you have to do something about that very quickly. And you can see the way the mind runs in channels, and just so easy. You can see over a period of months sometimes, how a particular kind of thought, whether it's a skillful thought or an unskillful thought, or a way of attending to experience, sometimes you can see a particular period, even a particular day or a particular event which initiated that channel in your mind, and how that channel gradually extended and deepened, and became more and more prominent part of the mental landscape over time. And that's why we need to take so much care of our mind. It's so sensitive, and it's so easily affected. And this is very soft terrain, and these channels form in it so easily, and can very easily become deep, and really a prominent part of our experience. So this is the kind of warrior spirit to maintain, whether through the various parts of the day. Sometimes it can be useful actually to divide the day up into different sections, to keep some kind of a ongoing a review of actually just how well we're able to maintain one's presence of mind and mindfulness. And so you have the morning period, the period through bindabat, after the meal, from the meal time, from after the meal through to midday. If you have a midday rest, and after the midday rest, from then until the afternoon meeting itself, the period between the afternoon meeting and the evening meeting itself, the practice after the evening meeting, and so on. And just by cutting things up and just going through them and just seeing what was the quality of my mindfulness, going through today. Review this morning. How was the morning meeting for you this morning? What about the period after the morning meeting through Bindabat? What about that period after Bindabat, before the meal? How mindful were you during the meal to taking the food? Did you take from each of the dishes like a gourmet, or did you take them like a samana? How did you eat? Did you eat like a samana? How did you spend the time after the meal? You have a sense of being a spiritual warrior after the meal, or not? This trying to keep track and trying to maintain this in the different postures and the different times of the day, and this creating this real sense of continuity. If you can, that's the one thing there's so much sense of well-being and a sense of something's happening in practice, when you can have that sense that there is this continuity of effort. As far as continuity of result is concerned, don't worry about that. What you're looking for is a continuity of effort. Some periods will be better than others, but the sense that there's been that genuine, sincere effort, however appropriate, in whatever way that's expressed. Obviously, in sitting meditation, yes, sincerity, genuineness of effort is expressed one way, and in conversations or attending very boring meetings like I had to today, then there's different kind of effort involved. But if you can look back on the day and you really see, I put forward that real kind of effort to abandon the unwholesome, to develop the wholesome, to purify my mind, to care for my mind. Then you say, this is the right way. This is the practice. So encourage you in this last few days of the retreat. You know that after the retreat, then tends to be a lot more going on, and there's katina ceremonies and travelling more. Start to be a few more work projects, and it's the time of making robes, and so really make the best of the time that we have left. And even if we don't wear socks, except perhaps in our kutis, and pull them up anyway, pretend you have some, and put some renewed effort. And there are certain things that are not a very good example for them. One of them is keeping silence in the agreed periods. I feel sometimes I ask for a special dispensation on this one. I have various things to attend to in my role as the abbot, and people to speak to sometimes. But for everyone else, it's a reminder, that after the evening meeting, in the morning, especially on Bindabat, after Bindabat, till after the meal, till after washing the bowl, this is a time where we've agreed to be silent, to be inward, and not to be socializing or even discussing the Dhamma, but really developing that as a period of just being with yourself, and not going outwards at all. So don't let Bindabat degenerate into like a sort of a stroll through the countryside, chatting about this and about that. If it's as I say, myself, sometimes I do speak with members of the Sangha, or if I have lay guests, that's a kind of special privilege or duty of the abbot. But for everyone else, to try and maintain that throughout the pansa. Indeed, it shouldn't really be a specifically pansa practice, like a sort of a special ascetic thing, but really as a way of living together, I really feel this is a very a good standard and principle to have and to maintain. Just as we fast for 24 hours a day, and it's become so natural as we don't even think we fast, do we? So I eat every day, and for us now fasting means not eating for 48 hours. But in fact, we fast for 24 hours just as a completely normal part of our life, and we can. I'd like to be able to make fasting from speech, a little bit more of that kind of ordinary occurrence than it is, or outside of specific practice periods, and not talking after the evening meal, after the evening meeting, not talking in the morning, not talking on bindabat. It's just like a really nice long stretch. It does affect you in the sense you not feel so sort of crowded and drawn out, and often when we have this kind of periods when there's more going on and people starting to feel a bit distracted and a bit kind of wunwai, and I always feel like sort of sympathy and wanting to help out and to sort of arrange things, the schedule, such a way to reduce that kind of disease and discomfort amongst people as much as possible. But at the same time, I feel in many cases, and for all of us, including myself, it's to a certain extent that it's self-created. That it's not necessarily a part of being here, but it's something that we create ourselves, particularly through lack of restraint with speech and chatting a little bit too much. So. We encourage to all, if things are going well and your practice is really humming along, then I'd like to express my appreciation and don't be complacent. And this says don't be content with the good results that you have already achieved. You'll be discontent with kusala dhammas. If things are not going so well, never mind, but really do something about it and push a little bit and get back on the track.